Hello and welcome to a new setup in Project B. Today we are doing April with a cherry blossom theme, which is very common for April. I have seen multiple setups by various content creators doing a cherry blossom theme for April. Anyway, I'll be using acrylic paint pens, regular water-based markers, a plethora of nail art stickers, and some rose gold shimmer paint. Starting with the cover page, as per usual, I found this illustration and I will put it on the screen. It is beautiful, and despite the fact that I just said cherry blossoms is perhaps the most common theme in the journaling community, it was very difficult to find inspo images that I really liked and, that were doable on tan paper. But I found this one and I thought it would look very beautiful on the cover page. This month also starts on a tan page. Just with how I did March and how many pages that took, I ended the cycle with white paper, so the new month starts with tan paper, which I don't mind. I think cherry blossom is the one theme that really goes hand in hand with craft or tan paper. I love the combination of the pink and the deep brown, and then also the light brown of the tan paper or craft paper. So obviously I had the sketch down and ready, so I'm starting with the pale pink acrylic marker, and this theme was filmed months ago, so I obviously didn't have my current collection of acrylic brush pens, so I was using my previous set of regular activatable acrylic markers, which is fine, I don't mind, but these are quite watery, so if I go directly on the paper, it's gonna take a lot of time to dry and it's not gonna be even. So what I did is I used a tiny detail brush to pick up the paint and pigment from the tip of the marker and just use that as paint, as though I had some paint on a paint palette and I am painting, if that makes sense. I like to do that sometimes if using the pens directly would not give me the results I desire. So I did that for all of the flowers and gave them a little time to dry. And as I did so, I used a deep rose color of the world marker from Crayola. I love this brown. It has a pinkish undertone, which it's obvious because it's from the rose set, but I think that makes it the perfect color to go with like a pink flower, right? So I really like this brown and I really like this pink that I used. I thought it was a match made in heaven, so I colored all of the sprigs with that. And as you can see, I had the green marker out. That is because I did some prep for this theme and I used the green there because that illustration had leaves, but all the ones that I ended up choosing for the other spreads didn't have any leaves, so I did not use the green one anywhere but that pre-prepared spread on the weekly log, which we will look at later. Once I was done with the brown, I picked up the deeper pink and did the same thing with a different brush. I took a little bit of the pigment, and as you can see, I have a piece of scrap tan paper on the side. That is because this color is really punchy and pigmented. So if I go directly from the pen to the brush to the paper, it will be very, very pigmented and a stark contrast to the paler pink. So what I did is remove some of the pigment from the brush onto the piece of paper, so the brush itself has less pigment, and I used that on the center of each flower. I wasn't really liking how bare it looked, so I ended up taking a warm gray marker and I used the fine tip of that to outline everything. But I also still wanted to add something to the cherry blossoms, and I wasn't really sure what to add because I didn't want to add anything like Japanese inspired, like lanterns or some other combination that I've seen on Pinterest. But I really enjoyed the idea of adding circles for some reason, and the idea that those circles would be in a rose gold shimmer paint. So that's what I did. I traced some circles using various round objects because I didn't have a stencil that big. And then I actually don't have a rose gold shimmer pigment. So what I did is I mixed my red shimmer and white shimmer, and that gave a beautiful rose gold. Lastly, I wanted to go with a very classic, simple lettering, so I did a Times New Roman font for April. if I'm not mistaken, and then underneath it I used a number stencil in my favorite number font, and I think I used the biggest size here to letter O4, which added a nice weight to the bottom of the spread. So on the next page, it's supposed to be the calendar. However, we are going to have a dashboard sort of situation because I really wanted the calendar to be on a black double spread. But again, because I started on a tan page and we have 2 pages of each color in the cycle, the next spread is going to be 2 tan pages. So I decided that just for this 1 month, we can do a little switcheroo, and this page would be the dashboard, and then we would have the calendar. So the right page is very simple. I divided the page into 4 sections, and we will come back to letter it, and I used the brown marker for that. On the other page, I lettered 1 line a day in a Times New Roman at the top, and then started on the illustration, doing the same exact steps. So first, the paler color to color all of the petals with a detail brush, then letting that dry while I do the branches with the brown, and then going back in with that deeper pink and another tiny detail brush, then outlining everything with the gray fine liner before adding in a rose gold circle. And here I also added a little rose gold thing in the center of each flower. I always forget what those things in the middle are called. To do the 1 line a day, I thought it would be very nice if I imitated the second line highlighting that has been a trend for some time, except I don't really have the dots, so I can't do it so simply, but I used a ruler. However, my outlines did not end up very even, and it's not the neatest work I've ever done, but it looks okay, and it adds something to the spread. Then to add the numbers, I will be using rose gold number nail art stickers that I got from Shein in a pack. I love these, but again, as I always say, you need at least 2 sheets if you are going to do multiple layouts with numbering, if that makes sense. I used double digits, so starting from 01 to 09 and then the rest of the days. I ended up having a couple of extra lines at the end, but since the 30th and 29th have such short lines because of the illustration, we can use 2 lines per day there or something like that, maybe add a bonus day or whatever. But now to letter the sections on the dashboard. On the left page, I used that rose color from Crayola to do some calligraphy, and I wrote finances because I know that is an important section, also tasks, and I wanted to add a work section, but for whatever reason I wrote works with S. I don't know if you can believe it, but I never noticed until I was watching back this footage and editing it. And I gave that to my friend with full confidence. I probably wouldn't have done anything to fix it, to be completely honest, but it's amazing how I didn't notice at all. I did leave a blank section just in case she wanted to add something different. After that, it's supposed to be a half and half spread, so half tan, half black, but I didn't really have any idea on what to do with that, so I just glued them together. So the next spread is gonna be 2 black pages. And as I said, I wanted that to be the case for the calendar layout. At first, I thought I was going to use the same technique for the illustrations, but on the black paper, it truly was not working. It wasn't looking so good. So after doing 4 or 5 flowers, I gave up and started using the pen as it is intended to be used, just directly into the paper. And that worked much better, even though I tested it on the tan paper and it did not look so good. So different papers, different techniques. But I did have an illustration sketched in, so I just colored all of them with the pale pink. And then to do the branches, the Crayola marker doesn't really work on black paper, so I dipped into some gouache paint, and I swear it is usually more visible on the black paper. It is probably because I used burnt umber in the beginning, but then I go back and add a layer of burnt sienna on top, and that made it a lot visible. But unfortunately, I don't like it for this reason. It looks like the flowers are floating, which is still a beautiful look, but with how everything is positioned, it doesn't really make sense. I wish I had one of the browns I have today to do this spread again, because it would have looked amazing. And I know that because I did a cherry blossom theme for myself back in February, and granted it was on white paper, but I used one of the brown acrylic markers, and I am pretty sure it will still work wonderfully on the black paper. Anyway, once that was done, I went back with the deeper pink, then did the other side, and I did use the brush technique thingy for the deeper pink, but because I just wanted a hint. I wanted the middle to be darker and like a smoother gradient, I guess. Then I did the other side, and as you can see, I have sketched big letters for each day of the week for, to put on top of the calendar, and I colored them with a black brush pen, but as you can see, it shows up on the black paper, and I thought that was a really subtle and nice detail. I love using this whenever I can because it just looks so nice. My favorite combination is using the same color on the same color, if that makes sense. So black on black. So the reason why I wanted the calendar to be on 2 black pages is that the calendar grid is going to be made of tan paper. So I cut a bunch of small pieces of tan paper. I can't remember the size of this. If I had to guess, I would say 2.5 by 2.5 centimeters, but I am probably wrong. Anyway, I cut a lot of those and then also rounded the corners of them before arranging them in the calendar layout. And I don't know if you caught it in the footage, but I almost did the April of 2024 or something because I had a different layout, and then I double checked when I was gluing it, thank goodness, and I glued them in the correct order. Then to number the calendar, I am using the same rose gold nail art number stickers to number the calendar, as I've said, also using double digits. Fun fact, I actually ran out of the number 2 for some reason, even though I've used this in a different theme and all was fine, but for some reason here specifically I ran out of the 2s, so I put a silver one until I bought more, and I definitely bought more and replaced it. Here's me going back on the branches with burnt sienna, and off screen I think I added a few rose gold circles as well, though I'm not sure if I like that too much. Next is the weekly log, but we are working on the decoration piece separately. So this is a pattern of cherry blossoms that I really liked, and it was originally black and white. I didn't do anything to it, and I found it on Pinterest, of course, and I really thought that I was going to trace and then sketch and then color it myself, and I tried that for maybe a quarter of it and then gave up because my trace didn't make any sense and I knew I wouldn't be able to differentiate between petals and leaves. So what I did is I printed it on sticker paper, and what I also did is I removed the background on a website so that I can have a black text box behind it. And I had 2 versions, one with a black background, one with a white background, because the weekly calendar is going to be on a half and half. And I didn't really like the idea of coloring around the leaves with black, and it worked. I didn't think it would, but it did, and I'm really happy that it did. We are going to have a Dutch door situation for the weekly log, but this one we are doing right here is for the white paper, and I used the acrylic paint markers to go over the flowers and leaves. This is where I used the green to make this more drawn than painted. I probably wouldn't have been able to achieve the same look for this layout if I hadn't gone with this technique. So I did the flowers the same way, and then the green for all of the leaves using also a detailed brush. I do dip my brush in water sometimes, by the way, if I felt like it needed that, but I would dry it before I, dipped into the tip of the pen. And then obviously once I was done with the pale pink and had done all of the leaves, I went back with the deeper pink. Oh, by the way, I used two greens, a lighter one and a darker one, just so that there would be a highlight and a shadow. And then also, I didn't mention this, but I went with the darker pink, then also went back with the paler pink, so there would be a smooth gradient before going back with the darker pink to put a bright dot in the middle, if that makes sense. Very similar to what I did in my own February setup. Same steps, just a different medium and technique. And for some reason I ended up outlining this with a black fine liner instead of gray, probably because that's what I did on the piece that I prepared beforehand for the black paper, so I wouldn't have two different finishes on the same spread and they would be visible together. But yes, I did that, and then I added the small thingies in the center. I cannot remember what they are called. Okay, but here is the layout in the actual notebook. As you can see, we have a half and half spread. The left page is black, right page is white, and we have the weeklies on the gray paper in between. And here's me just fussy cutting around the flowers and leaves of the art piece we just did before peeling off the backing and sticking it down. So we have the same thing mirrored on the black paper, except that I printed that, as I said, on a black background because I don't really like coloring around stuff. It doesn't really always look nice, but this blended seamlessly. And I also, by the way, mirrored the image so they wouldn't be facing the same direction, if that makes sense. And you can already see the style that I went with because I did some sections previously, but I used that deep rose marker from Crayola here to do the outlines and the lettering. I used my regular calligraphy to do some, faux calligraphy for the days from Sunday through Saturday, and also the boxes around them, because I wanted to bring in that brown color into this spread because it doesn't have it anywhere. I also ended up cutting two pieces of gray paper almost in the same size of the weekly sections. The last one is going to be the 5th week of April, if I'm not mistaken, and then the first one on the black paper is going to be a brain dump. Another special or extra spread which I like to include in every theme, like a new idea. So for February it was a bingo board, for March it was a quote page, this time it is a brain dump, and also a one line a day spread. And of course I rounded the edges of these pieces. Lastly, we have the monthly review. So I found another illustration that I really liked. I will insert it in. I also tried to use my brush technique on this paper, but it wasn't really showing up at all. So I just used the marker as it was intended to be used to do all the flowers in the paler color, which looks slightly different, but that's just how it is with white paper. Everything looks slightly more saturated. But I didn't want to change the color that I used because it would have definitely looked different. I did end up using the green marker slightly here, and I also used the same brown that I've been using for everything, went back with the brush and the deeper pink to add the petals, and then also added some rose gold details before adding a big circle with the rose gold as well behind the flowers. I didn't realize before this, but my own setup for April 2025 is almost identical to this one in structure. I did a Dutch door, same style, did single boxes for the calendar, a lot of parallels and similarities. Then I lettered beside it April's review, April in a Times New Roman font, and then review in my regular cursive because those are the two fonts that I used throughout this theme. Then to tie it in with the calendar, I cut some square pieces of the tan paper to bring back that common element into this page, and also to neutralize everything and just give it an extra element and decoration. I cut that into the same sides and rounded the corners as well, then glued them down and lettered with a black brush pen for some reason the 4 categories: highlights, challenges, favorites, and finances. With that, we have reached the end of the setup in Project B, yet another successful one. I really like this one despite the slight hiccups and technique and style and minor mistakes, but I love it so much. I love pink on tan paper, and this makes me want to do tan paper for an entire year. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned because the theme for May is perhaps the most spectacular theme that I've ever made, and that is saying something, because this year I have done some great themes, and also probably maybe because I've been saying this about the previous themes as well, and also March in Project B was otherworldly, but I promise this one takes it to a new level, okay? But yes, do stay tuned and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.